very spiritually oriented people, and we had this whole exorcism going where it was all around, and we had holy water. I mean, we had everything. You know, everybody contributed, and we put the recorders in the center of the table with crystals and sage and all these different things. And I played sacred music for hours into the recorders and put light around them. And when I picked it up, it was still there.
None of it helped.
None of it helped. No.
Do you have faith in that stuff anymore? Or no.
It was ordained. I needed to talk to Francis. I needed to understand what was going on. I had to get rid of this la-la version of reality that I've been living with.
Well, that's why I'm asking, do you think the crystals and the sage and the sacred music, is that la-la, or is there some value to that for you still?
I think that there can be value. I think it's intentionality. It's more about your own intention. But I was never going to get what I wanted, because that's not valid. Guardian angels are just reptilians with their guardian angel suits on. Angels are reptilians. Spirit guides, for the most part, are also reptilians. Ascended masters are reptilians. Practically everybody that's dealing in this reality, and I'm not going to say everybody, because I did talk to I talked to Francis's consciousness, who was assigned to watch over him, and that was real. But we're still in this lockdown, so much of what we think is going on is a lie.
How did you come to discover reverse speech finally?
That's when I had heard of David Oates and had listened to him on Art Bell, and while we were at the Prophets Conference, we interviewed him. I always thought it was fascinating, and I just started experimenting with it. I'd heard about you could reverse EVP, and when I finally did, it was a shocker.
About reverse speech, you say, I, like virtually all of you, have been on the same quest and literally stumbled into EVP and reverse speaking. These open doors to me, I've heard it described as pulling aside the net for a glimpse out. It certainly has its limitations, but I've come to rely on this as probably the least corrupted source of information within this net, as there is no conscious control over it. We can't give ourselves reversals. It isn't conditioned by what we believe, nor what we have been taught. It is outside of time and reveals the past as well as the probable future, which is not cast in stone. In all of the 400 plus people I have listened to in reverse, no one has ever given a different story nor contradicted this basic information. Many add to it, but it is always the same story.
Right.
So you're starting to reverse EVP for the first time, and what are you discovering?
That Francis was pretending to be my spirit guides, the elementals, the earth, that he and his little group of friends were jerking me around. And then they came up, once I started to get it, they admitted it and laughed, and they thought it was just a tremendous joke that I was so gullible. And that's when I tried to get rid of him, of course, but then he was not going to go. But it wasn't until I started really talking to him, and it just took a long time, because he wasn't the kind you could just sit down and have a regular conversation with. He really was quite mentally ill, actually. He had died of rabies, and I think that carried over into the other world. And but he would, if he was in a mood, he would answer my questions, and about what life was like over there and all that. So the reversals, once I knew I could always catch a lie, I had a lot more confidence about talking to these people, because I knew that if they were going to jerk me around, I would catch it right away. And once they knew that, the lies stopped.
Really? You got to a point where you just chucked it all.
No, I never did.
You told me.
I know, I would say
remember,
that.
because you were telling me that
I would say
about
that, but I never did.
talking to the earth and talking to the trees.
I know.
I remember you were just so into that, and you were so blown away to access that information.
I know. And then when I found
then you found it was all a crock, and it was all Francis, and then you screw this.
I know.
But
I would do that for about 2 weeks, and then I would pick it up, and I think, maybe it can be different.
So you somehow, something inside of you knew that there was I need to go through this and find out what the hell's going on.
I had that happen to me one night. I'll never forget it. I was so disgusted with this whole thing, and I thought, everybody's telling me, just put the things away. Why are you doing this? You're jerking around with these lower astral and people, and they're just liars and screwed up. And I laid there in bed and I thought, why do I do this? And I had this thing happen to me, and one of those things you really can't put into words, but it was like I knew there was something I had to do, and I couldn't put it aside. And from then on in, I stopped trying. And it's been a circuitous path, but finally, one thing, it was like the onion, opening up, trying to get to the heart of what all this layers of stuff was.
Now, in terms of reverse speech, what are the best techniques, and why is it important to listen to white noise?
White noise is important for EVP. If you want to listen to spirit people, I'll give you a clue right here. Anybody who's listening. If you get on there and ask to speak to your grandmother or your uncle, and you go out to a cemetery, or you just say, I want to talk to spirits, you're going to get a reptilian right now. Guaranteed. You will be talking to reptilians, and they will be jerking you around. What I would suggest, if anybody is really wanting to talk to people, go to a public place, a mall, an airport, a cafe, where there's ambient voices, not too loud, but there's hum of human voice in the background. And then tell the astral people what you have heard me say. Their lives are horrible, that they are hunted for food, and that this thing is going to end. It's not right what's happening to them. They will talk to you. They will really work hard. They're not allowed to. It's illegal over there now to talk into a recorder. So they will do it, but they have to be very careful.
And what are the best reverse techniques for asking yourself questions so that you can get to the truth of yourself?
Well, you need a recorder and you need software. I use SoundForge, but there are other recorders that have reverse on them. But you need to be able to slow it down because it's very fast. And you also need to be able to do something they call trim crop, or isolate a small phrase and then fill the screen and slow it down so that you can see subtle words, and you just have to have a lot of patience and a lot of time and work it, just work at it.
When you're listening to crowds, what has that shown you?
The EVP, the spirit people, as I said, need a carrier wave in order to have a voice. If you give them just white noise, like shh, they will make words in that, but it's not easy to understand. But I have found that human voices in the background, they will take that human voice and they will speak to you. And they will address what you're saying. They might even call you by name. And you'll know you're being spoken to by somebody who's, it's not a human, physical, it's human, it's non-physical human.
You've listened to news broadcasters in reverse, and sometimes you've heard them make direct reference to you.
Yeah.
What is that like? Give me a for instance.
They'll say Peggy is listening, or the girl who listens in reverse, or usually they'll use my name, and that always catches my attention. Now, that being said, this is the universal mind, and anybody who's doing this, they're not going to hear my name. They're going to start to hear their name because they're the one listening. And that universal mind knows this reverse speech part of the mind is connected to all minds. So because I'm listening, I'm hearing Peggy, but somebody else is going to start listening and hearing references to themselves. It's very weird at first.
What types of people have you reversed, Peggy?
Well, all kinds of politicians, because they're making the decisions that affect everybody's life. Lots of people in the UFO field, in the metaphysical field, just people on talk shows, friends, myself all the time, and lots of spirit people.
What are some of the most astounding reversals from these people that you've heard? Some that really stick out.
When I first heard that on the wedding of Charles and Camilla, when the